All right, well, welcome everyone, and thank you for attending our webinar today. We're so excited to have you for the IMA Student Series Finance and Accounting Professional Panel. This is actually our fourth time holding this panel, and just each time that we've done this, we've had such a great turnout. And as you'll see today, we have over 300 students that are participating today, and we had over 1,100 register for this event. Now we understand that some others might not be able to make it for work, school, whatever it may be. But we were glad that you can make it here with us today. And we're looking forward to this discussion with our panel. I do want to note that this session is being recorded, as you just heard. So we'll be sending the recording out after the webinar. We will also be posting this to the IMA YouTube page. It's under the Accounting College Student Toolkit. So if you type in Institute of Management Accountants on YouTube, you'll be able to find that link. And if you enjoyed this discussion and you want to hear from more CMAs, you can view the past videos that we've recorded for these sessions. And then also, you should have been muted upon entry, but if you could all just double check and make sure that you're muted, that way we don't have any distractions, because we want to make sure that we give all of our time to our panelists here today. So we'll start with introductions. My name is
Tyler, are you able to remove the stars on your end?
Oh, yeah. There we go.
There we go.
So my name is Tyler Skelton, and joining me today is my colleague, Mary Patterson. Mary and I are academic outreach managers at IMA. We both work with colleges and universities to promote the Cma certification and then other resources that IMA has to offer to get students career ready. And one of the reasons why we do this webinar is because we want you to know about the different opportunities that are out there in accounting. It's not just audit or tax, which for some might be a great fit, but we want you to know that there are so many other possibilities out there. And that's why we put together these panels. And that's what you're going to hear today from our guest speakers. So I'm based out of the Seattle area. I work with schools in the Western US, shown here in purple, and Mary is based out of Pittsburgh and works with schools shown in blue for the Eastern US. So if you have any questions or would like to have a CMA come to your class and speak, or for any of your accounting clubs, please reach out to us and we'll be happy to set that up. And then if you can't remember who to reach out to, really you can reach out to either one of us. But if you want to screenshot this or take a picture so you have our contact information, just know that we're a resource for you to reach out to if needed. Oops. So let's take a look at today's agenda. I'll be giving a very quick overview of IMA and the Cma certification. And then from there, we'll get right into the panel discussion where Mary will ask she'll take some time to ask some questions to our panelists. And then throughout the webinar, our team will be monitoring the chat. So if you have questions for us that are IMA specific, or maybe you have questions for the panelists, put those in the chat box and we'll try our best to answer those along the way. And our panelists might also try to answer those questions, but just note that we have a lot of questions and chats coming in, so it might be difficult to answer everyone.
And do us a favor, when you do ask a question in chat, put it to everyone, not just one individual person, because we're all trying to monitor it at once. So that makes it easier.
And then I should also mention too, we will have time about maybe 15 minutes or so at the end from Q&A from the audience, where you'll be able to ask direct questions to the panelists. So let's start with a little bit about IMA. IMA is a global association with more than 140,000 members who are accounting and finance professionals working in business. Our organization has more than 300 professional and student chapters located in cities and campuses around the world. So this creates a great networking opportunity. And this is what we want to stress to you as students, is that by joining IMA, you're connecting with professionals that are local to your city or state. So these are people that are working in industry and are great to connect with, because you never know what sort of career opportunities could come from that connection. So the earlier that you start networking and building your professional network, it's going to give you so many more opportunities as you get into your career. IMA also offers the Cma certification, which stands for Certified Management Accountant, the global standard in management accounting. And then on top of that, we have so many other career enhancing resources that are available to our members. And I'll be talking a little bit further about those here shortly. So with this slide here, I'm going to provide a high-level overview of the Cma exam structure. If you're interested in looking into the details of this, you can go to the IMA website. But most of you are probably already familiar with the exam in some extent, but I wanted to quickly run through the two parts. So the Cma exam is composed of 2 parts, testing your fluency in both accounting and finance. Each exam is 100 multiple choice questions. They are 4 hours in length. And on top of the 100 multiple choice questions, they will conclude with 2 essay scenarios, which are like mini cases. So if you look at part 1, it's called Financial Planning, Performance, and Analytics. It has 6 sections. So this is going to be more of your accounting focus. It will cover things like different financial statements, budgeting process, variance analysis, best practices and internal controls, and data analytics. And a lot of what you see on the exam will come from your cost and managerial courses, also maybe your intermediate financial accounting courses. So again, this is going to be more of your accounting focus. You'll also see technology and analytics added to this as well. And then part 2 of the exam is called Strategic Financial Management. It has 6 sections. So you'll see that includes a list of finance topics. So it'll cover things like financial ratios, risk and return models, variable and fixed costs, best practices in enterprise risk management, capital budgeting techniques, and also ethics shows up on this. So if you are a finance major, don't tune this out because you hear the word accounting. No, this exam, part 2 of the exam, is finance focused. And then I'm sure you'll hear from some of our panelists as well about the finance portion of the exam. The exams can be taken in any order. So if you are a finance student and maybe you feel stronger with the finance topics, you can start with part 2. You don't have to take this in order. Or if you just finish an advanced financial course, you can start with part 1. So really any order that you feel comfortable. What's also great about the exam is you can take this while you're still in school. And we actually encourage you to do that because a lot of the topics that you're learning in class will show up on the Cma exam and it's fresh in your mind. So the next thing I want to talk about is a really great program IMA has to offer, which is the Cma Scholarship Program. So be sure to take a picture of this and let your professor know about the Cma Scholarship Program. So this program, IMA offers 10 scholarships per year at every 4-year college or university. And the scholarship covers 3 years of IMA membership. You'll get the entrance fee into the Cma program covered. You'll get both of the registration fees for both parts of the exam. And then you'll also receive 12 months of access to the GLIME Cma study materials. And the only stipulation of this program is that you must be nominated by a faculty member from your school. So that's why I said take a picture and make sure that your faculty are aware of this great program that we have, because it's going to be great to earn a professional certification while you're still in school and then ultimately pay 0 out of pocket for this. So be sure to let your professors know and that you're interested in being nominated for the Cma scholarship. And then one of the many great benefits of being a student member of IMA is that you could take several of our courses at no cost. So 2 of the courses we're showing here are 2 of the more popular courses that we have to offer. We have our Data Analytics and Visualization Fundamental Certificate, and also our Robotics Process Automation, or RPA series. So these courses are meant to give you a foundational understanding of these topics. And what's also nice about them is that when you complete each course, you'll receive a professional certificate from IMA showing that you completed the course, but you'll also receive a digital badge that you can add to your LinkedIn profile. And then in addition to these courses, we have several other courses available to students in things like technology and analytics, soft skills, and more. And to become a member, an IMA student member, it's just $25. And Mary, if you could put the link in the chat. So this link, it should automatically reduce the student membership from $45 to $25, but if that doesn't work, you can use the code STUDENT22 at checkout, and then that'll reduce it to $25. So with these courses as an example, these are both great courses to build your knowledge and skill set, and it's going to set you apart from your peers. So we hope to see you take advantage of these courses and the IMA student membership. And we also want to encourage you to participate in the 2023 IMA student case competition, where you and a team of 3 to 5 of your peers will analyze a business case and submit a PowerPoint presentation analysis of the case. So you do need to be a student member of IMA to participate. And if you are one of the top 4 teams, you'll get a chance to compete at IMA's Accounting and Finance Conference this upcoming year in June of 2023 in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So not only will you get to compete against finalists in the US, but you'll also get a chance to compete against other finalists around the world. So we're really excited about that this year. So be sure to enter into the student case competition. You'll see the cash prizes that are available for first place and runner-up. And Mary, if you could also put the info in the chat where they can find out more about the competition. And then the case has already been released in the Strategic Finance magazine.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, thank you. So, and then finally, before we get to our panelists, we invite you to attend the IMA Student Leadership Conference this year in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania from October 20th through 22nd. So it's coming up here very quickly. So join us for a fun-filled event with presentations from accounting and finance leaders. We'll have different industry tours available. We have a career fair and just so much more. So if you have to, talk to your professors or your department chair to see what resources your school has available for you to attend. You could also reach out to us to see if any of our chapters can help out as well. But it's a really fun event, and it's the first one back in person in 3 years, so I know we're all looking forward to that. So let's go ahead and meet our panel. First of all, we'd like to thank all of our panelists for being here with us today and taking the time out of your busy schedules. I know it's a little bit later for some of you, but we want to thank you for being here. And we're looking forward to today's discussion. So I'll go ahead and introduce first Tom Biggs. So Tom is an accounting senior advisor at Dell Technologies. He has earned his CMA, his CSCA, which is IMA Certified in Strategy and Competitive Analysis Certificate, and also the CPA. Next, we have Pamela Boles. Pamela is a lease and fleet accounting manager at Lyft. She is a CMA. We also have with us Ashley Griesshammer. Ashley is a controller at Love Every. She holds the CMA, CSCA, and CPA. And finally, we have Ugo Uduchukwu, and I really hope I got that one right. Ugo is a manager of cost accounting at DoorDash. And Ugo has earned his CMA and CSCA. So welcome everyone, and thanks again for being here. I'm going to pass it over to Mary, and we'll start the discussion.
Great. And remember, for those of you that are in attendance, please feel free that you can add anything in the chat and we will be monitoring that. But let's get started with our panel. So our first question is, would you briefly describe your career path so far? How did your college studies influence your decision on your initial job? So we will start first with Ashley.
Hello. Thank you to everyone for being here. Thanks to Tyler and Mary for putting together, such a great panel. I went to the University of Michigan, so I don't know if we have any Wolverines on the line, but go blue if we do. I would say, to kind of touch on what Tyler got at earlier, I went to business school undergrad, and I was in accounting. We didn't really have majors, but I was accounting and finance concentration. So both accounting and finance. I know Tyler talked about how, there's some finance topics on the CMA. My first job out of college, I actually did private placement in debt. So this is very like Wall Street type finance. I did not go the traditional accounting route at all. Kind of wanted to try something. I think it was a really good experience for me to learn a lot about financial statement analysis, which is one of the topics covered on the Cma exam. I did that for a few years. At the same time, I was taking my CPA exams, and quite honestly, I landed in more industry accounting just on a whim. I wanted a change. I really liked working with small businesses. So after I spent about 2 years, in finance, I made the switch to industry. I worked for a privately held distribution company. It's private equity owned. And then I worked for kind of a similar manufacturing company owned by the same owner, really in like that kind of director of finance controller role. So overseeing, financial statement preparation, working with our financing banks, working with external auditors or accountants. And after I did that for a few years, I really moved into kind of the e-commerce space. So the role that I'm at now, Love Every, is a super high growth direct to consumer company. Probably not the target audience. We make baby toys. I think a lot of you probably don't have kids yet, but we make baby toys that are sold kind of on a subscription model. So think of it as BarkBox for babies. It shows up, every 2 or 3 months based on your child's stage. So we've just grown a ton over the past few years. We've gone from 20 million in revenue a couple years ago to almost 200 million this year. So rapid growth on the team, in the company. There's been a lot of formalization of processes and controls that have gone along with that. I feel like I'm kind of rambling now. I'm way beyond 3 or 4 minutes, but the CMA has helped me a lot along the way. I will say I did not take the CMA until I was working in industry accounting after I had gotten my CPA. I strongly encourage everyone on this call to do it as early as you can, just because once you're working a full-time job, you've got a family and other obligations, it just gets harder to study. And when you're in school, you're kind of in that study mindset already. So it's super easy to just knock out. And I would also say it sets you apart. You know, I'm hiring a lot for my team, and I specifically hire a lot of, you know, new grads or people with 1 or 2 years of experience. And I think having a certification like that is really going to help you stand out in an applicant pool, you know, than somebody who's maybe just coming in, you know, with their bachelor's. So there you go. I'll stop talking.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ashley. Yeah. Ugo, you have some big shoes to fill, but I'll pass the question to you to talk about your career path.
Yeah, yes, I agree as well. I have big shoes to fill. So for me, thank you all for having me. Similar to Ashley, I also read accounting and finance for my first degree. My first degree was back in Africa, in Nigeria. So after I finished my first degree, I decided to work in a bank, and I worked, I think, less than a year and realized I wanted to do something different. Then I went ahead to get a master's degree from the University of Hull in UK. And after I finished the degree, at that time, my family was in the UK, but then Procter & Gamble came for a recruitment event in London and then wanted me to go back to Africa. So the only reason why I took the job was because I was supposed to work in industry, in manufacturing, which is what I've always loved to do. And I say this because really in school, I enjoyed all my courses, cost accounting, management accounting. I did very well in those courses. So it was, for me, it was an easy transition. And I was able to tell family, hey, let me go do some career first. So I left London, went back to Nigeria, and started my first job as a plant cost analyst. It was very exciting. I enjoyed working a lot with the non-finance folks, with the plant operations, the plant engineers, and being able to add value, make them to see things from finance perspective. And, you know, these are all things that we would usually learn during our CMA courses. So I really loved it. I did it for about 2 years, was promoted on the role to a senior cost analyst, which I did for another 1 year. And then I got another opportunity to do plant accounting combined with internal control. So of course I grabbed that as well, because that was another great opportunity where I was, you know, managing the SOX control. I was the first person, the first internal control manager. So I had to set up controls, getting things right the first time, doing spot audits, spot checks. I know a lot of people didn't like me from the start, but eventually they saw where I was coming from. They saw the role I was playing, and, you know, eventually we got on well. I finished this role, and an opportunity came out in the midst of an audit to do tax. I know everyone always says, so why did you go from, you know, management to tax? But really that was what opened up. And I think the finance director at the time felt that I could easily fit in. It was in the midst of an audit, but I was able to, you know, go in and do tax. And I love the switch, being used to working internally to working with tax officials who maybe are not very cooperative, as some of us might know, but I enjoyed it. And, you know, I feel like I made great progress there. Then I relocated to the UK, left P&G, and then came to Houston, Texas. And then I worked with a couple of other smaller manufacturing companies, K Custom Products, where I decided to go back to cost accounting. Tax was a bit different in Africa versus the US. So I easily switched back to cost and management accounting. So I was the senior cost accountant for a couple of companies where obviously I was involved with certain standard costing, bill of materials, and all that good stuff. Yeah, so and then my current job is with DoorDash Technologies. I know everybody says, why do you need a cost accountant or cost accounting manager at DoorDash? But the business is growing very fast. We have stores that keep inventory. So that's a lot to do, and we are growing really, really fast. So I enjoy my current role. I do quite a lot that is related to the courses I studied during the CMA. So really, it's exciting, and I keep getting challenged every day. I feel like when I try to compare management accounting versus financial accounting, I always love the fact that I'm working internally, I'm working to improve the business. It gives me joy to be able to add value. Of course, no offense if I'm looking at historical from a financial accounting point of view, but I love the fact that I work with the plant team, with the site team, with the operations team, you know, going for projects like purchase price variance, reducing it, and seeing how they impact the bottom line. And, you know, I love it. And I think all this would not have been possible if I didn't obviously do my CMA. I didn't mention that when I moved to the US, the CMA was the next best thing I wanted to get. I knew that with the CMA, I would go for, and I've seen that, because with that, I saw that even for assignments, for promotions, I was always sought out for just being a CMA. So again, thanks to the team.
Yeah, thank you, Ugo. And I love that you're able to bring an international perspective, because I know we have students on this call from all over. So it's neat to see where you were and how your career has progressed. So we will move over to Tom. So same question, will you briefly describe your career path so far?
Yeah, so mine will be pretty simple, because I attended Brigham Young University in Utah, and I met the Dell recruiters, Dell Technologies in the business school. I had one thing I needed out of life was to find a job in Austin, Texas, because that's where I needed to move to marry my wife. She was like, yeah, but that's the only place we're gonna live is in Austin, Texas, because that's where she grew up. So Dell was the perfect fit for me. And I think it was just kind of a perfect match in the sense that I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my degree. Yeah, I got my bachelor's and my master's in accounting. Big Four would be, knocking at the door for most of my colleagues or most of my classmates. Probably 60, 70% of them went to work there. And so when Dell said, hey, we'll do a development program, a rotational program for entry-level people in accounting and a separate one for finance, I was like, well, that actually sounds like a pretty good deal. So for me, I did my first 3 years at Dell were in a rotational program, the accounting development program, where I spent 1 year in a role and then I'd move to another role. And all the while I took MBA style classes, which were essentially like corporate finance at Dell or investments at Dell, derivatives at Dell type of things. And really it was just a great way for me to piecemeal and taste. I've been there 6.5 years. I've been on 6 different teams in that time. So really big focus on moving around, building a tool set, and then eventually being able to become a subject matter expert somewhere. But it's been perfect for me. So I've just been a little bit of everything all over the accounting side of the world.
Perfect. And I know students also, they love to hear about these rotational programs, and some people aren't familiar with them. So it's neat to hear that Dell Technologies, they had that for you coming in as a new hire. So Pamela, last but definitely not least, I'll move on to you. If you could briefly describe your career path so far.
Yeah, for sure. So excited to be here. Thank you for having me. Hi, students. So let's see, my summary. I have a very non-traditional background as well. I moved from Germany to the Bay Area when I was 19. And I think I saw some folks from Golden Gate University here. So I think there are definitely some Bay Area students, and anyone that lives in the Bay understands that this is a very expensive place to live. And so being young, coming from another country, I was just trying to find, the fastest path to, get working and get earning. And so I got my associate's degree, and then I moved into industry working for a cybersecurity government contractor as an administrative assistant. And it was a really good experience because I got to kind of see how business operates from the inside and just taking on a lot of different hats. And bookkeeping and accounting was one of those hats. So that's how I got interested in accounting, and then decided to go back to school. I went to Golden Gate, taking evening classes while I was working full time, and got my undergrad. And then from there, I learned about the CMA at Golden Gate University. I think there's actually a partnership between IMA and Golden Gate. And I thought that was just a perfect fit for me. And so I decided to sit for the exams, and I got my certification. And then from there, it really helped me to kind of get into the accounting field. I got my first role as an accountant working for a company called Exojet. They're a private jet company, and I was there for 4 years. Got a couple of promotions as a result as well. And then from there, I landed a job pre-IPO at Uber, which that was a really exciting time. It was definitely a lot of work to get to the IPO, but it was definitely a great experience. And I was with them for 2.5 years. And now I'm on the other team at Lyft. And I've been with Lyft for about 1.5 years. So yeah, that's kind of my brief summary.
Wonderful. All right, so we will move on to the next question. And that question is, what is your favorite part about your current role? And also we have to say, what is your most challenging part in what you do? So I'll start with Ashley again with this one.
Yeah, I actually really liked that Pamela, brought up her experience going through an IPO. So Love Every is working towards that goal. It's super public knowledge, so I could share that. But we're hoping to go public ourselves in the next year or two. And I would say that's what I love and is very challenging about this role. So kind of going from a small company to a big company, it's really fun to participate in a lot of things. And especially as controller, I kind of like to think of controllers large. They can really be like a quarterback of a business. Like you're working with every different team in the business, whether it's, making sure expenses are classified correctly or, helping a team understand, how they're affecting gross margin in the business. Like you're working very cross-functionally and you have to know everything that's going on. So I really like that aspect, but kind of, back to what Pamela said, there's a lot that goes into rapid growth, implementing controls. I mentioned in the chat, particularly systems. So I work a lot with our IT team to make sure we're getting proper data, proper reporting, transactions are flowing correctly. So you wear a lot of different hats and it's fun, but also challenging.
I like that analogy, saying that you're a quarterback as a controller. So that makes a lot of sense. Ugo, I'll go to you. What's your favorite part and probably your most challenging part of your role?
Okay, for me, I'll start with my favorite part. Like I mentioned earlier, really what I enjoy doing a lot is working with the non-finance. So in my current job, working with central operations team, local operations team, to actually drive projects. There are lots of people that work in companies that feel, okay, we can go ahead, take decisions without having the CMA or having the accountant in the room. And it always goes bad, and then they come back to you when there is a problem. So really, my favorite part is being able to be a great business partner to the ops team. And I love it when they realize your value and want to involve you even when before the decisions are taken. So have a seat at the table. And I've enjoyed that for most of my career. Even when I was at P&G, I spent 8 years there working in the manufacturing sites. I'm able to work with the plant operations, the plant engineers, and I always love the question that they ask me, hey, why do I have to do this? And you have to explain, how this would drive the result, how this would drive the bottom line, so it really goes a long way. I make lots of friends actually, because some don't look at the finance perspective or the accounting perspective. So when they see that, they'll be like, wow, oh, this is why we do what we do. Operations is all about, let's go keep running the line, running the operations. But at times you might be running inefficiently. So this is where the accountant comes in and says, hey, for instance, usage is so high, we can't keep running the line and be having a lot of scrap on the line. You can actually work with the team leadership to stop the operations line for a while, for just as an example. Again, similar to that, when I talk about the most challenging part, it's for me, I would say being able to be in the table, get a seat at the table. And the reason why I say this, I've worked in places where you see operations going ahead and taking decisions themselves and not involving the accountants. For each role I do, I always make it a major point to ensure that the team actually understands that the accountant is beneficial for success of the team. Some feel that, hey, the accountant is there to slow me down, and not allow me to do what I want to do. But I love being able to make them see the reason why you need to involve the accountant in the decision making, let him be part of the process and advise at that point. Because if it doesn't go well, the accountant will be the first to report the numbers, and then you're struggling with that. So really, I always make it a point of duty to ensure that I have a great working relationship. They understand the importance of me being in the room. And I've been quite successful because for most decisions, I'm always at the table when this decision is taken. So you feel you're part of the team and you can advise at that point. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. I think having all departments understand the reasons for decisions would make things easier for everyone when they're working. So great job with that, Ugo. And Tom, how about you?
I would say right now I have probably my most non-traditional accounting role at Dell that I've had. I work on a team that helps explain to other parts of the business, so that'd be like sales or the operations side, what the current revenue standard means to them. So I work on complex or large deals, and they'll say, hey, we're thinking of giving a certain sales concession to a customer. How is that going to affect revenue? That goes, great. Okay, thank you for asking me. I could spout out ASC 606 says da 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 da, and that gets super technical, and everyone that doesn't have an accounting degree, and even those some who do, go glazed over, and they're like, I don't care. So it's been the first time that I've had to go in and talk just like a layperson and just express accounting in very business terms. Like Lisa said in the chat, it's the language of business, and be able to explain things in a way that has made me grown as a professional, trying to realize, oh wait, I can't just hide behind accounting lingo or people that already know what I'm talking about or already studied what I studied. It's just helped me grow as a professional. And so that's definitely been the thing I've liked. But on the flip side, the ambiguity at Dell at times can be very hard for me, where we start to sell something. I mean, it's a Fortune 50 company, 98% of the Fortune 500 are our customers. We're over 100 billion in revenue, which means at the end of the day, we just keep selling different things all the time. Things are always changing, and that's super hard for me at times to keep up with everything. But I think it's part of the fun of just growing. If you're staying in your comfort zone, man, that's a boring career to work for 40 years. So I'm just grateful that I have the chance to grow along with my company.
No, that's great. I think that's one of the biggest things. Adaptability is something that I know a lot of recruiters are looking for with new hires, because companies are changing literally all the time. So wonderful. And Pamela, I'll move over to you. What's your favorite part of your current role? And also, what do you find most challenging?
Sure. So my favorite part right now, I think is working as a manager and coaching my team and just helping them, along their career path and being able to do so. This is actually the first time that I'm managing a manager, which is very different than managing individual contributors. And so this has actually been new and challenging for me to manage and groom a manager. But it's very rewarding. So I definitely like that aspect of my current role. Challenging, I think kind of along the lines of what Tom was saying earlier about just communicating cross-functionally and having communicating the importance of accounting or accounting needs in simple terms, especially to operations that might not necessarily care about we having to close the books or our timelines, and just getting their buy-in and understanding that, hey, this is really important, because as a public company we have financials that need to be released. We have earnings calls, and that's going to affect our stock price eventually, and that again you will be interested in the stock price because it's going to impact you personally. Not that I would necessarily use that as an argument, but that's basically the circular logic of how and why it's important for us to get our accounting right. So along those lines, I would say process optimization, just and there's a lot of times competing needs depending on the teams. Like we have external reporting, we have FP&A, and they don't necessarily always want the same things. And just optimizing and just streamlining processes to be as effective as we can be.
Wonderful. And I think for a lot of students listening, they probably never thought, oh, as an accountant, I might be managing or training other people, but that's the beauty of this. And we're trying to show everyone, really with this accounting and finance background, your career can go in so many different directions. So thank you for sharing that. All right, we're going to go to our next question. What are the benefits of having a professional certification, and how did you decide on the CMA, and how has that helped your career? So I'll start with Ugo. I know you all kind of touched on that, but just really hit it home for the students.
Okay, from my perspective, I feel like one of the big benefits I get from becoming a CMA is that it makes you stand out in the crowd. You can't go wrong with that. There are several accounting majors, there are several finance majors, but when you take that extra step for the students, in this case, to become a CMA, you're kind of projecting your career in the limelight. You kind of it's easy for people to see the value you bring, even by just talking to them. When you have an issue in your workplace, I feel your perspective, it's always unique and different. So for me, getting a CMA when I moved to the US was a no-brainer for me, because I felt, having been in industry, been in manufacturing, I always compare the CPA versus the CMA, but like Tyler mentioned, the CPA is more like externally focused. It's more like audits and internal control. But the CMA is actually, I would say, being able to add value in the organization you work for, being able to see the numbers, being able to be in the weeds, to be able to, understand how, like, for instance, purchase price variance is calculated, inventory count variances. The auditor, from a CPA point of view, of a financial accounting, just comes in maybe for a couple of weeks, does audits, tax, and goes. But you are there, you live this company day in and day out. So getting a CMA, it's very important and unique, because most of the values that you learn while getting the CMA, you are going to be applying on a day-to-day basis. For instance, when I was internal control manager, for example, part of the values I learned through my ethics courses was able to actually help me to go and because I had to set up internal controls systems for the company. I was the first internal control manager then, and I had to show people that it's right to do things, get things right first time. So for me, that's one of the key benefits. So moving to the US, I had to do the CMA, and I've seen the effect of doing the CMA. As we all know, the CMA is globally recognized. So I've worked in 3 countries, Nigeria, UK, and US, and the CMA is one qualification. I know that if tomorrow I decided to go to another country, it would still be recognized. It's still the same, knowledge that I will still use to add value and drive my company forward.
Wonderful. And Pamela, I'll have you answer that question as well.
Yes, I think the CMA definitely was more aligned with what I ultimately wanted to do. I never had interest in working in public accounting or being an auditor. I always wanted to be part of a team and being part of working towards something and helping a business grow, and ultimately I feel you get that sense of contributing to something when you work internally for a business. So it's always been something that was more interesting to me. The CMA certification itself definitely helped me understand from a more conceptual and the various topics that are covered on the exam and how it's structured. Just getting a broader spectrum of all the different ways that financial data is used and how it's used for decision making and for management decision making internally for a business, and how important it is, and yeah, it just provided a framework that I could follow to achieve the goals that I wanted to achieve. So yeah, it's always been more aligned with ultimately my own personal career goals.
Wonderful. The next question we have, can you give us an example of specific CMA concepts and skills you have used on the job? So Ashley, I'll throw this question to you first.
Sure. So 2 areas that I would call out. So I would say financial statement analysis is definitely a big one. I think, your accounting team can really often be your first line of, it is your first line of defense, in compiling your financial statements. It's really important to be able to look at accounts and say, oh, this account is up 50% for August. Like, why? That's not the trend. It looks strange. Like, I should investigate that. or understand ratios. Like normally advertising is 20% of sales, and this month it was 40%. Like that stands out, and then you can really, know to drill down into that and, find, was there an extra invoice posted? Was something mistyped? So you're really that first line of defense in making sure everything's, ticked and tied. And then the second one I would say is internal controls. And I know that sounds very boring, but I would say that, like, especially in 2022, I don't mean to go off the rails, but there are a lot of cyber attacks on companies every day. Like my company is getting, phishing emails multiple times a day. And it's really important for an accounting team to have solid internal controls to make sure money's not going out the door that shouldn't be. So separation of duties of who is entering a payment versus who is approving it. And it sounds like, really mundane stuff, but it's so important to make sure that, the company's assets are safe and your team is doing everything you can to, be on top of those things.
Wow, wonderful. And Tom, can you give some specific examples of CMA concepts?
Yeah, so I'll also plug for internal controls. I'll be really brief. It was really nice knowing that I had learned about them before I was assigned a key SOX control, like very early in my career, and had to own it and talk to our external auditors intelligently about it. So that I was very grateful for, and I did use it a lot. Now it's actually the technology side, the accounting information systems. Even though Dell hires from a lot of great schools and all the people that work there are amazing, super smart, one of the reasons I've been able to stand out among some of my peers is simply being able to understand accounting systems, what a database is. Like I don't know SQL. I barely do VBA. So there's people that are far better than me. All I'm trying to say is the barrier to entry isn't even that high, but just having some proficiencies in those areas goes miles. Like every effort in those areas and learning what's on the tests and understanding those systems goes above and beyond the value you get out of it and what you can provide your company. So super, super harp on that. That's just one of the best places I could have ever spent time in learning that stuff.
Yeah, and I'd add one more thing if I can jump in. So I have also done the data analytics course through IMA, and just kind of piggybacking off of what Tom said, particularly if you're working in an e-commerce company where you're dealing with high volumes of data, high volumes of transaction, being able to show that to people and give them actionable analysis, how much of this, what are our sales by product? What is our margin by product? Is our sales by geography? That's the kind of information that helps, executives or finance teams make actionable business decisions. So I think that's, kind of another good area to focus on.
Great. And I'm sure for both of you, Tom and Ashley, there are some professors that are nodding their heads with everything that you just said. And also, if you didn't hear earlier, Tyler talked about our data analytics course. It's a free for students if you're an IMA member, and that is a great way to show that you're learning and you know those skills when you're talking to a recruiter or just networking and trying to get your first job. So for the sake of time, I want to see if we have any questions that might be good for the panel. First of all, I think this is all great. This is a fantastic panel and a lot of good information has been spoken about. So Tyler, is there any questions that were coming in?
Yeah, but for everyone that's on here, please feel free to start putting in some questions. I did get one in regards to their job search. So maybe Ashley and Tom could take this one. What advice would you give prospective graduates on their job search? Why is it important to get involved early in the recruiting process? Yeah, Tom, you want to go first?
Yeah, I can jump in. First off, I would say you are far more in control of your career than you realize. I just assumed that I'd have a job offer by the time I became a senior. And when I graduated with just 2, when other people, I swear they had 12. And I was like, what's the difference? They're like, well, when did you start recruiting? When did you start going to those booths or talking to people? I was like the summer before senior year. And they're like, oh, well, that's it. Because all these other people would know the recruiters. And they started making meaningful connections on LinkedIn, asking questions, getting involved, and posting, or there's just so many different ways you can reach out. And it's your network that gets you hired. It's not the piece of paper behind you. It's not the degree. It's not even your certification. Those like open a conversation, but it's the people you know, and they can help mentor you and guide you towards even career paths you didn't realize. Like Dell was never on my radar. I didn't even know that rotation programs existed for industry. I thought I had to be an auditor. So props to my managerial professor, Monty Swain, for directing me towards industry at all. But yeah, getting involved early is the only way I would have gotten a job, like a different job than what I had. I was just super fortunate to get the one I did.
Yeah, I guess I would echo that. You know, Michigan had a really great career services center, brought a lot of companies in to help do recruiting. So that was really helpful for me to get my first job. So echo everything Tom said there. I realize a lot of people, you know, maybe don't go to some of those like target schools, or you're doing like an online degree program. So you might not have those same opportunities. So I would still, again, echo what Tom said, like get active on LinkedIn. There are a lot of opportunities that are posted on there. You know, my company, for example, we're not coming to schools to recruit, but we post our jobs on LinkedIn. So, you know, being active in those searches is really going to help. And then this is maybe not so much related to recruiting, but in your first, you know, year or two of the job, what Tom said about you're in control of your career is so true. Like I have staff accountants who have 1 or 2 years of experience. They're really eager to learn, and they come to me and they're like, I want to learn more. And I'm like, great. What do you want to learn? Like you need to be vocal about what it is you want, what area you want to specialize in, what you see for yourself, like to your managers. Like we want to hear that, and we cannot read your mind. So make sure you speak up about the things that you want to get experience in or want to have exposure to.
Great. And Pamela, do you have I know you started out as a kind of non-traditional about how you got your job and recruiting. Maybe have insight with that?
Yeah, I think I would add sometimes taking a risk and jumping in, you know, even if the role doesn't necessarily look like exactly what it is that you want to do. Sometimes if it's, you know, a great company that you can see yourself in, there's always opportunities to move around internally in companies as well. Like, for example, when I moved from Exojet to Uber, I actually started there in a temporary role. So I started as a contractor and then got converted to a permanent role. And so, you know, the tech industry in particular is very difficult to penetrate a lot of times unless you know someone. And like Tom was saying, networking is really important, but especially if you're someone that maybe is not super comfortable with networking. I mean, that LinkedIn is definitely a great resource, but if you may be more introverted and maybe not as comfortable going out there and networking, I definitely would say if you see an opening, go for it. And also if you feel like maybe you're not 100% qualified, I mean, I would definitely say make sure that your qualifications are aligned, you know, fundamentally, but definitely taking that risk and going for opportunities that you find interesting, because you never know where it's going to lead.
And I would also add to that, because I also remember as a college student saying, you know, everyone talks about the network and networking, but okay, how does that even start? And that's really what the IMA is about. So I don't know, I know Pamela, you're very involved with your local chapter, but that's something even as students, when you're an IMA member, I mean, you can attend local chapter meetings, get to know the members in your city, connect with them on LinkedIn. And that's one of the benefits of being a member of IMA. So it's not just that you're a student member of IMA, you're as much of a member as Pamela, Tom, Ugo, and Ashley as well. So that's just something as a bonus that I would say to all the students listening to this.
Go ahead. I was going to say, Mary, we had one question about the CMA and CPA, and for those that had that, why they decided to choose both. And I think it's Tom and Ashley on that, but also after they go, I wanted Ugo to maybe speak a little bit about the CSCA and why he decided to pursue that. Yeah, so Ashley, you want to go first this time?
Yeah, so I am older than I look. At the time, the CPA was really, you know, kind of pushed as the accounting credential. I would say since I have had both the CMA and CPA, like, you know, through the past 10 years of my career, like I can tell you without a doubt, like this CMA credential is gaining a ton of traction. I see that very frequently called out in job descriptions. You know, it used to be that you'd see, oh, CPA required, and now you're seeing CPA or CMA required. Like it's on that same level as the CPA. For me, it was, you know, really just kind of getting that education. I interned in audit in public accounting and, you know, just kind of knew that public wasn't the way that I wanted to go, but still again saw value in the certification. But I would say that like, if you really want to do both and you love studying and taking tests, go for it. But you're not really gonna, you know, you're not hurting yourself by just doing the CMA versus the CPA. Like it's got a lot of credit in the industry now. So, and I think that's, again, a lot of that's due to the hard work that IMA has done to like, you know, promote the credential, showcase, you know, the talented people who have it, and really get the message out.
Great.
Yeah, I agree with that. At Dell, when I got hired, part of my condition of my 3-year rotational program was to get the CPA, because I had to explain every single time what the CMA was to my managers and be like, no, like this is like a similar degree or like a similar certification. It's been interesting though. I've now been there at 6 years at Dell, and I have managers who say, oh yeah, I look for CMAs now. Like I look out for that. So it has value. I think both do. I think there's just a layperson who knows nothing about accounting. I would probably argue the CPA is the first one they've probably heard of between the two, but both lend, if you are in the know, both lend an enormous amount of credibility. I liked the idea of having both, so I have like ultimate job security. So hell and high water, I could go work for the Big Four if I had to. That's the way I look at it. And maybe that's the whole, hey, I'm an accountant, I don't take huge risks. So maybe that just explains it.
And Tyler, I don't know if we can put the link to the dual certification. So we do know there are some students that want to do both, and we have a great article that talks about that. And then Ugo, if you want to talk about the CSCA and why you decided to do that.
Yeah, actually, mine was actually more of a need. So I was already a CMA, and then I am always in the habit of going and asking for more. So, you know, I went to my boss, who was a CFO, and asked, hey, that was my former company, and said, what else can I do? And then he asked me, Ugo, what do you want to do? And I said, hey, I would love to try strategy. And then I think he hesitated because maybe he felt, okay, that's something unique that he needs to be sure I could do it. And when I saw that he hesitated a bit, and now, you know, went through IMA's website and learned about the CSCA, I'm like, this would be a good way to show my boss that, hey, I can actually do this. Luckily, the CSCA was quite easy for me. So I went, enrolled, wrote the exam, passed, and I didn't even tell them till I went back and say, hey, I even got certified in strategy. And he just said, hey, Ugo, I'm sure you can do this role you've been asking for. And that's how it was actually an additional responsibility. So he actually gave me that job. So really being certified in strategy and competitive analysis, it's really important, especially if you're in an industry where there's a lot of competition, you do a lot of competitive analysis, SWOT analysis, which you would easily learn from your CSA courses. So it was a no-brainer for me.
Wonderful. And I am now going to ask my favorite question, and that is, what would your advice be to your younger self as a student, or what do you want to tell students as they are looking forward to their future? So Pamela, I'm going to give you the first crack. What would you tell your younger self and give advice to these students on the call?
I think my advice would be kind of along the lines of what Ashley and Tom were saying earlier, just taking control or understanding your ownership in your own career. I don't know that I necessarily realized that as much when I was younger. And you need to really take responsibility and just putting in the work to really understand what it is that you want to do and really understand or really be clear on with yourself that it's really what it is that you want, not necessarily what everyone else necessarily expects from you. Especially when you're thinking of, getting a CPA versus a CMA. If the CMA speaks to you, if the, topics covered is something that you would really enjoy doing on a day-to-day basis, I would definitely say go for what it is that you really want to do. Yeah, and just, I would say that things change a lot as you progress in your career. So, if you make the wrong decision or the wrong turn somewhere, it's not the end of the world. You can always pivot.
Yep, great. Tom, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I think I would first tell my younger self, you can do ambiguous things and hard things, and you're stronger than you realize. And the other thing I think I would jump in and talk about is just that when it comes to school versus work, there are not textbook right answers most of the time. Yes, like cash is still cash, and when you sell something to someone on credit, it's still AR. But be curious, a lot like what Pamela was kind of saying, like be very curious about things, ask questions, because everything suddenly becomes very gray at times because there's a lot of right answers and some are just better right answers than others. So just realizing that there isn't just one right answer all the time, whether it be in your career or literally how accounting and finance actually works in the business place. So just be open-minded and ask questions. There are no dumb questions. The only dumb questions are the ones you don't ask.
Yep, great. How about you, Ugo?
For me, my advice I'll give to my younger self would be to network and network and network. So it's very, very, you can underemphasize the importance of networking. So network a lot, meet the right people. And also when you start working, or even before you start working, get a career mentor. It goes a long way, have a connection, try to ask questions. Yeah, you can't go wrong with doing that.
Great. And then Ashley, bring it home.
I'm going to mom y'all for the last minute or two. I would tell myself, honestly, to calm down. Like, if your career is a long, long journey, it is a marathon. It is not a sprint. So you don't need to be achieving every single thing like as soon as you possibly can. Make sure you're, learning what you can, but also enjoy what you're doing. And I would say, make sure you're doing something you really like. I can honestly say, like, I love going to work every day. I love my team. I love the work I do. And it's super great to be able to do that for the rest of my life. But don't do something just because you think you're supposed to do it. Don't become an investment banker because it's what everybody else is doing. That's never going to work out for you. And then the last thing, kind of similar to what they all said, is, don't be afraid to take risks and take chances. I know Tom said it lightheartedly, like he's always going to be employable because he's a CPA and a CMA, which is really, really true. So don't be afraid if you're like, wow, I've got this awesome opportunity with a startup. It's not a huge Fortune 500. Maybe it's not super secure. Take it if that's what you really want to do. If you have a certification like this, you're going to land on your feet. And sometimes the best way to, make advancements and get ahead is to really like take that leap of faith, even if it's scary. So
great. Well, I want to thank all of our panelists, and something Ashley and Ugo said, I can tell from all of you that you love your jobs. Ugo even said joy when he was talking about his job. So this was really great. And I want to thank you all for giving us your time and talking to the students. I know we didn't get to all the questions, but we have a few things that also came up, and Tyler will cover that with the slides.
Yeah, so one of the questions that we saw was about the Cma Scholarship Program. So we just wanted to bring this up again. So as a scholarship recipient, you have to be nominated by a faculty member. We have that form. So if your professors are not aware of this program, let us know and we can send you the application form to pass along to your professor. So you have to be nominated by a faculty member. And then with the scholarship at no cost, you'll get 3 years of IMA membership. All of the fees associated with the exam, so entrance into the exam program, you'll also get each of the exam fees. So the part 1 and part 2 will be covered. And then on top of that, you'll get 12 months of access to the GLIME CMA study materials. And typically the nominations are from the academic year. So September 1st through June 1st is when we accept the nominations from your faculty members. So hopefully that answered your questions. I'm trying to look at the chat as we go through here, but I know that was one of the big ones was to go back and review the CMA scholarship.
Yeah.
But we'll go ahead and wrap up here. First of all, we just want to thank the panelists for being here today. And I could tell by the questions that this was such an informative discussion. And we wanted to put together a few items for you to take away. So if you're a student, a junior, senior, or a graduate student, make sure you're taking advantage of the CMA Scholarship Program. It's a great opportunity to take the CMA at zero cost. And just one more time, you just need to be nominated by a faculty member. But once you're nominated, you're pretty much automatically, you'll receive the scholarship as long as your school hasn't nominated more than 10 students. You could also reach out to us to see who that professor might be, and then also how many have been submitted so far for your school. Now, for some of you, you may be a freshman or sophomore, so the CMA exam might be a little far out, but we highly encourage you to join IMA. The student membership is just $25, and you'll have access to the courses that we showed you in data and analytics or robotics process automation. We have different soft skills courses, so it's a really great value for being a student member at just $25. And as some of the panelists mentioned, it's an opportunity to network with your local chapters. Some of your schools may have a student IMA chapter available. So it's a really great way to be involved with the accounting and finance field. And then also, once you do that, you'll study and pass the CMA exam. You'll graduate and then work for 2 years and get your work experience. And then you'll be able to add CMA to your name. So here is our contact info. Feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn, or if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. That's what we're here for. And as we mentioned earlier, if you want to set up a presentation, have a CMA come speak to your accounting club or in your class, let us know and we'd be happy to set that up. But we just want to thank everyone for attending today, and thank you so much to our panelists.